Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast series for beginner web developers and general web enthusiasts. Now, introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Gaines, and Ed Mann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast with more chemistry than the periodic table. My name's Ed Mann, and today I'm joined by Mr. Michael Budd. How you doing, Mickey?
I'm all the better for that fantastic introduction. How long have you been thinking about that one up for?
Well, I heard it a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, you know what? That is so good that I'm going to have to write it down and use it on the pod. And we finally
You've not
actually
pitched
used
it from another
so...
podcast, right?
I didn't. Not another podcast. I can't even remember where it was actually from. So I'm sorry for the original creator. There probably is. Hopefully, there's Creative Commons license on it that I can actually use it. But yeah. So if we've just violated all copyright on an amazing saying, like you're not allowed to say, "Oh, what is it? Let's get ready to rumble," are you? In the voice, because that's supposedly
just did.
Yeah. Okay, we're off the air now.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Fired. Yeah.
Anyway, Mickey, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Not too bad. I'm back from a holiday, so I'm relaxed and raring to go.
I like it. And on this holiday, obviously, you didn't do any programming. You know, you just took it all out.
Define programming. I didn't have my fingers on a keyboard. I read some books, and that was about it, really. I think I read the latest .NET magazine, some of it.
Any interesting bits in there?
I don't want to slag it off because I hope that one day there'll be a full spread on Three Devs and a Maybe. So, it was all right. There was an interesting bit on like React and how to do stuff. And I think I was just saying to you, actually, this isn't a React thing, it's a JavaScript thing, but it was just really stupid. But, the should component update method, like before I was doing like some big, horrible like comparisons between lots of different props and stuff. And like the book was saying, obviously what you want to do is make it more fine grained. So just check each individual item and then just cut out straight there because you want to keep that computation as minimal as possible.
Short circuit as quick as possible.
Yeah. So obvious. Why am I not doing that? So, but now I've got like hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds, but maybe 50 components. So I have to go through them and change that. In theory, I don't know how much time it's actually going to save me, but like, even if it's like a few milliseconds, you want it, don't you? So,
well, absolutely. If that's if you're going to save anything per render, or to not have to render, it's especially for a big interface, it's definitely a win. And where did you go on holiday?
I went to sunny Scotland, and we did actually have like
it was actually sunny.
Yeah, it was, and I think speaking to the locals, we were so lucky because we actually did get like the one sunny week they'd had all summer. So it could have been quite miserable, but it was. Scotland's the kind of place that any weather, it looks fantastic. So, really nice week and just got some time to spend with my little boy and obviously my other half. So, really nice.
Happy days. Yeah. And getting back into work. I did actually have a holiday. Yeah, I was the same, pretty much week just before yours, actually. We were trying to coincide this podcast and it was just like, I can do next week. And you're like, I can't do next week. I'm on holiday. I'm like, actually, I'm on holiday now. There we go. Yeah. True story there. But anyway, so I was on holiday as well. And I too probably did the opposite of you. I was on the computer, actually. I was not able to bring my laptop and I did do some programming. Kind of fun stuff related. It's funny. I always intend to not do any programming, but I end up either picking up a book, like bringing a book with me that allows me to kind of explore different things, or bringing the laptop and actually doing some fun coding things myself. And I say fun, like I talked to Amy, my girlfriend, and she's like, you're on holiday, you don't have to do this. But it's hard to explain the difference between code that, like this is just exploratory code, like fun things, little projects and stuff I want to do. Case in point actually was what I did last week. Must have been 2 weeks ago now on holiday. So throughout the holiday, there was some discussion about anagrams came up. And I was like, it'd be interesting to see how you can do like an anagram solver. So I kind of thought about some ideas. I thought it'd be a great use for Clojure. And so I came up with a couple of ideas, a couple of simple solutions. It was interesting because actually one thing I didn't realize was all Unix platforms, or pretty much all Unix platforms, specifically Mac OS in my case, actually comes with a dictionary, file dictionary that you can use of like pretty much the whole English language. So I was able to take advantage of that. And the way I did it was the initial case, what I did was to get an anagram is, essentially what out of these words, out of these letters, characters, what words can I make in any order? to get a unique ID for that, I was able just to sort them based on the ordering. And then I was able to just simply do like a lookup table. So, be able to do a lookup, and then it would be able to actually, so the first solution used a hash map. So it was a simple case of just a dictionary lookup with a linked list in there. So, it would say do a lookup, and then it would find the word. But then actually the second one was like, I'm thinking, maybe we can make this more performant, make data structure wise, it's very performant, obviously with lookups and stuff, but, it has to deal with storing quite a lot of data. So I was thinking, all right, that'd be quite a good use for a trie. So a trie is a tree data structure that handles kind of prefixes of a key. So you have a key that's split up into, in our case, characters, and then it's going to be able to split those up, and essentially it makes it both lookup and also storage more efficient. And I used that, and then there was another one, I was Googling it, because I was like, okay, well, those are the two solutions I could come up with. And then I looked online, and some guy had a really interesting thing, taking advantage of prime numbers, and the fact that prime numbers, when multiplied, the product of a prime number is always unique. So I thought, he was proposing, and I thought, I could do this in Clojure, proposing to, you essentially replace every letter of the alphabet with a prime number, and then in whatever order, so the uniqueness is by whatever product, in any order, you'd be able to get the same integer value back. So I was able to use that along with an int map instead, which was a better, more performant hash map. And I was able to get some performance boost out of that, and I just thought I'd write it up, and I've put it in a post on my blog. And it's funny actually, like thinking about it, I'm like, why did I bother spending all that time doing that? But at the time, it seemed like an interesting thing to do. And looking back now, it's like, oh yeah, no, that's cool.
I know exactly what you mean though, because I'd not had a holiday like since Christmas, and I was like, I can't wait to go away from the keyboard. Must have been day one. I was like itching to do something. Like
we have a problem, don't we? We have a problem.
Well, it's a problem, and we're lucky. I mean, this was a hobby for me before it became my career. So, but you have to get away. But for me, I guess for me, I just wanted to get back to like some sort of theory. And me and you have both been reading the Sam Newman book, the microservices one, and I'd not had a chance to read that for a little while, so I was getting back into that. And like I said to you, like I came back really pumped. But sometimes you read these books, you think, everyone's doing stuff so perfectly, and you see your own hacks, and you think, why am I not doing it like that? And then you start thinking, like, what are the reasons why you aim so high to do things the right way, and then you fall short? And it's the same old reasons every single time, isn't it? It's like, I didn't have enough time, or something. It was just, it usually comes down to time, I guess, or money, or et cetera, et cetera. I think I've come a long way, but reading the book, I was like, I don't really have a deployment strategy. I'm definitely not doing CI or CD for that matter. I'm not doing anything like that. I need to come a long way with my version control and testing and that kind of stuff, but I still don't have a really good procedure for like deployment, I don't think. So it was really good. And the other book I was reading is there's a C PostgreSQL up and running. It's just one of the O'Reilly books. It's not like a advanced book or anything like that, but it's not a beginner book either. And I only read a couple of chapters actually, but they were like ones I really wanted to read a little bit more about. So things like indexing and there was some really good advice in there. I'm sure it's all stuff you can find on the web, but there was like a few queries that it shows you in the book, which just shows you things like, which of your indexes are being used, which ones aren't. Because the ones that aren't
super useful thing to actually work out what is actually in real production code. Because that's the thing, isn't it? You assume that this index is going to be used, and actually when you first run it on your dev site, they may be used, or your dev box or anything. But then once in production, once the data is changed, the heuristics of the data is changed, and the query planner may decide something completely different, and then you're just generating this index for no reason whatsoever. Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this before, but it's like sometimes you think, it must be like really scientific ways of doing things. And actually, even the book says, like, actually try this query, see if it runs faster. If not, try this other query.
The black box.
And it even says, like, and it even says things like, you can actually disable sequential scan. You can completely cut it out, so you force it to use the indexing that way. And just interesting things like that. And also, one thing I'd not done, I'd like loads of individual indexes on columns. And then I read the book and I was like, I'll try it, and I'll put an index on multiple columns, see if that runs faster. And I need to benchmark it properly, but it certainly feels a lot faster just from what I've done today. So some really good things.
It's just aiding the query planner, isn't it? Trying to give it as much help as possible. Being like, oh, you want to use this index because, it's got these two already and things like that because you're always querying for that. And you can do things like bitmap index scans and stuff where it will get like the index of one, the index of another, and then bitmap them together. But, having a composite is probably it's definitely more performant because, it's already got that information together. But then it's less useful because you have to have both bits of information. So it's that trade-off between, do you want two indexes that you can use, for different things and a bit more, leeway, or do you want that one? And, probably you just want that one in that case.
Yeah, for me, certainly for what my application is doing, majority of the time it's going to be, just that one set of, columns. So, but it's interesting. And I've got a lot of sub-queries in a lot of my queries now. And the book, it doesn't say don't use them, but it says be very careful with them.
Yeah, they are the one. I mean, for me, actually, like moving to Postgres was one of the things was that subqueries are better than joins in some cases, which was kind of mind-blowing coming from MySQL. But you still have to. And I think it is just being with caution. And the more you get familiar with these things and the more you look at how the query planner actually works and stuff, you'll get an idea. And like you say, it'll be a feeling of like, oh, that's not going to work well. Oh, that will work probably better. And it's not an exact science, but there is definitely kind of aids out there to help you.
Yeah, I definitely feel like a self-plug here, but I want to listen back to our podcast with Bruce actually because it was really interesting. I don't think I took it all in.
I've listened to that a couple of times to be fair. Just because what Bruce was saying. I mean he was overload of knowledge on that podcast. It was really valuable
Definitely.
one. But it's interesting you say actually about like going on holiday and kind of like kind of going back to basics a little bit and theory and stuff like that because I find that too. Like I find that like you get caught up in the work stuff and everything like that. And then especially, I mean, at the moment, I'm actually working on quite a big project. So you get caught up in that and then going back and kind of being able to go to like a root thing of like, oh, I would like to learn another language that's completely different, such as a Lisp like Clojure, or I want to learn like the theory about these certain algorithms and stuff. And it completely takes you back. And that's the bits you enjoy more, I suppose, like for fun. That's the fun side of things because it's that kind of exploratory, interesting. Oh, I've not heard this, seen this before, etc. And that's where I get the enjoyment out of it as being a holiday thing, I suppose, which is what I tried to explain to Amy. I'm like, this is fun programming. Not the saying that programming for work isn't fun, but it's a completely different kind of, different stage where you've got stuff that you've got no deadlines, no pressure on what you're learning, and you're kind of just drifting off and learning things you want to learn. Like I wouldn't have been looking at the tries and things like that and then how to implement them into, in Clojure and finding out Clojure has, a source in and get in. So it actually has this ability to do multi-dimensional key arrays, being able to do these tries and stuff. So it's what you learn and like kind of interesting things.
I think you hit the nail on the head though. You were saying like about the having the time to do it. Like I mean, I am my own boss, but I still have a client and stuff. And your boss, it's hard to turn around and say, oh, do you know what? I didn't do any of the things you asked me to do today. I've just spent all the time just taking a step back and doing something.
Yeah, taking a step back or going down a complete rabbit hole that has nothing to do with anything. And that's why it's nice when you're on holiday. You get to your brain gets to wander a little bit. Yeah, that's it. No pressure. But how are things going work wise? Are you still enjoying the project?
Absolutely love the project. It's sort of meant to, like a soft release meant to happen this month, and I don't think I'm going to be a little bit late on that, but the client's happy with the project. I absolutely love working on it, and it's just it's really good fun, but it's quite demanding in terms of some of the functionality that we need in the application, sort of like instant kind of updates. We change these filters and we want to know the results straight away, and then optimistic updates, all that kind of stuff, and keeping it fast and reliable. Those two things don't seem to want to play together that nicely sometimes, but I absolutely love it, and the potential of the product is huge, and that's the really exciting thing about it. I can't ever see a day that would be like, oh, do you know what, this is done. I know we spoke about this with what you work on, but it's really cool. It's so many like different add-ons we could put on and stuff, so it's really cool. Yeah,
and you've also got a little plug for a certain website and a certain couple of pictures. I'm not going to let this go, bud.
I wasn't going to bring this up. I just want to say this because I do feel like I've sold out enough. But this is
in fairness, right? If Lou had been on here, if Fraser had been on here, we all would have been plugging it. We would all just say, you have to go and see this because the pictures are great.
Yeah.
So what was the website? And what is this about? Maybe a bit of backstory about what happened here.
Okay. So the URL I think is 123-reg.co.uk/VPS-hosting. And basically, I'm not sure actually. I'd say this. I'm not sure. But I did a little bit of work for 123. And then we got talking and they basically very kindly offered me like a VPS service for free for a year in exchange that I would do like a testimonial for them. And so they basically came down and they like took photos and brought like, video cameras, that kind of stuff. So videos as
Great photos.
They're a little bit embarrassing. I'm not gonna lie.
It's always good to have these shots, Did they say you could use them on your own website or are they copyrighted?
They did. Yeah, they sent them
brilliant.
obviously.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Perfect, man.
And it was proper professional photographer as well. Really good photographer.
Yeah.
And, shame he had to work with me, but, well, what can you do?
You can't get the staff. Can't get the staff.
You can't. And, I'll just say I don't usually work in a field. Those photos are a little bit
it's great. It's just the perfect, you've got your laptop going, you've got the two chairs. They look like really uncomfortable chairs. You haven't got backbreaker chairs, and you don't look like, to be honest, that you're in a perfect like ergonomical position that's going to be good for your back. Looks like you're doing your back in there. Yeah. But you're enjoying it.
I have had a bit of abuse from my mates about it. Like a lot of people asking, do I really get Wi-Fi out in the orchard? Which of course I do.
You do?
No.
So there
actually, you can get 4G out there actually. So I could.
Wi-Fi antenna there. There you go, man. But yeah, definitely, guys, check this out. Good old Mickey B. Well, it's just, look, exposure for your company is good, especially if you have got your own company, which you do now. That you need to kind of.
I don't have a website. This is really bad.
That is probably something you need to invest in. Maybe some time. If you had any time, which probably is quite limited at best, is probably to get your own brand sorted out.
I plan as soon as I finish this project to spend a month doing my masters, finishing that off. And then maybe do that as well.
Nice.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, sounds like you're a busy guy. Busy guy.
Always. I really, really wish they could invent like the 48-hour day or something. It's just crazy. Never enough time, is there? So how about you? You've been working on anything exciting?
So again, there's big projects. It's been really interesting actually, and very taxing, kind of mentally taxing. Outside of work. What have I been doing? Got a house, which is always good.
Yeah.
Put an offer in on a house. It got accepted. I thought, woohoo, that's it. It's like buying a car. You just go and pick it up. No, of course not. It's a long, drawn-out process now. So we've got the solicitors and mortgage stuff and all that. So, so it's going well. It's just long-winded. And, you just have to keep on that. Grown-up stuff, that is. That's another thing about going on holiday, you don't have to worry about that, and you can just start programming again and just think, I'm not a grown-up, not dealing with real life problems. But
teenager again. Yeah.
And then that's so that's going on, and the jogging's going well. Me and Amy are up to about 9 miles now, which is quite surprising to us. We didn't think we'd be able to do that, and we've got about a month or two left until the big race. So we only got 4 miles. We say only. We only got 4 miles to do left. Yeah. On the race, But we're hoping what we'll do is get up to about 10, 11 miles, and then do the last 2 on the day. Will be we'll be able to do it. And surprisingly, it's not going too bad. Like we picked up this online. Amy found like this little plan thing because I didn't know what type of training to do. You're meant to you obviously run, but like for how long and kind of what type of thing, like dealing with hill training and stuff like that. And I put it in the show notes, and it was essentially just like a plan for I think it was like a 13-week plan to get ready for half marathon, and we've been following it pretty much to a T, and it's been working really well. At this time, we can do that, and it's like, wow, okay, I did not realize that it would it would work that well. So all I can say is it's really just applying it, doing the hours and stuff, and that's it.
It's commitment and determination, and sticking to those plans.
I think that's it. Hard. Yeah, that's the hard. That is the hard thing. The easy thing is just follow the plan. The hard thing is to stick to the plan. But it's like, I suppose, with anything.
Yeah, but we are still doing the Free Devs and the Maybe sponsored marathon, right, in 2017.
I would love to, what you mean in New York. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not even, that is on my bucket list now, is that if I can do a half marathon, let's double that and let's do a full marathon,
I think Fraser would probably just run around with a pint in his hand, blindfolded.
Yeah, I think
so
Fraser will have a massive hangover from an amazing, like, too many drinks on the plane, was out all night, and then he'll just rock up and do it. Oh, man.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, kind of, there's been like a couple of little bits that'd be great to kind of chat to you about.
Yeah.
So one thing, actually, a kind of little Dropbox add-on that I never really knew existed, and it's actually just been. I think it's just been released. I'm right in thinking it's just been released, because so obviously, you know, house stuff and everything, documents. People like the printed paper. They like the dead tree. It's a pain, you know. It really is a pain because sometimes you just want to be able. I mean, especially like with signing things, you know, you have to print it off, you sign it, you then scan it back in. Complete ball ache. But actually, Dropbox, and I didn't realize actually this type of technology has been around already in a couple of other products. You still print it off, or you still have a print out, a letter or whatever. But you can actually scan the document. You take a picture of it, and it's able to do kind of like a scan of it. So it's almost like it works out, and it's really quite clever at what it does. It doesn't just take a picture of it and that's it. It will actually generate a PDF from the text, and it will actually clean up the text to make it look like it is just the original document. And it works really well. You know, like a scan would. So typically you can think of how you would do a scan. It is very much the same, but you just take a picture of each page and that's it. Generates PDFs, boom, that's it. Easy, one done. You know, you don't have to worry about having a scanner and everything like that. Really great technology. And also I didn't realize that a couple of other products actually have OCR support. So it can actually do the object recognition, character recognition as well, which blows my mind. I haven't actually tried those yet. So, but, you know, that is pretty amazing, those type of things. I know that you with your receipts and stuff, you had that.
Wave invoicing.
Yeah, you may be able to take that. I mean, it's just a great thing because you have your camera with you all the time as opposed to a big old scanner. So this way, it's just quick and easy.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Last few months, I've had to do quite a lot of scanning and stuff, and I do tend to use my phone now more than anything. And but yeah, the wave invoicing thing, I was amazed how accurate like the OCR technology is. I thought it'd be really, really flaky, but it wasn't. It hasn't been at all. It's so good. You know, literally, you just scan it in, or you know, email them this picture, and it literally works out like the name of the vendor, the price, the tax, all that kind of stuff. It's incredible. So good.
OCR technology has, got crazy good, hasn't it? I mean, I don't know, like when you go into the bank and stuff and you put, you know, even be old school and have a check. And if you have a check, it's actually able to do OCR on that now as well. People's, you know, writing and stuff, which is pretty mind blowing. And it's very accurate as well for that. And it just saves you a job. I mean, especially in the case of if you had a good document that you wanted to make a PDF that you could then have OCR on. Yeah. I mean, if it worked fine, great. Saves, you know, I mean, if it's for free, if it's essentially comes out, you know, you take a picture and then it's doing it for you, that's great. And even, you know, what Dropbox do, which is just, it kind of just cleans up the picture to make it look more like it was a document again. And it does a really good job, and you can get PDFs, and I just prefer PDFs, especially with sending them and backing them up and making sure you've got them. One thing my work do that I really love is the fact that they just email me my pay slips, so I don't have pay slips, because it's just a ball ache. It really is. Like trying to maintain all these pieces of paper that you're just like, I could have this all on my computer and be easily searchable and print off if I need to.
It's just such a waste of paper, a lot of stuff, isn't it? It's just so unneeded. It's crazy.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And another thing, actually, so this was a blog post I actually read when I was on holiday. It was to do with podcasting. Marco Arment, so he's the guy behind Instapaper and a couple of podcasts, and he was talking about podcasts, and he makes Overcast, so he's got a vested interest in this. And one thing that I didn't realise, and I've always thought, it's a bit of a bug. Like I find that sometimes when I'm seeking through our podcast, and it will come to the end, and it still has like 5 minutes left to play, and you're like, well, this makes no sense. How is this, working? I always thought it was just a bug of, I don't know, whether it's the file we're making or whether it's actually the Overcast or the podcast app. And it turns out there is actually a bug with variable bitrate. So this is what we use. We use variable bitrate MP3s we encode into or export into, because that does give us very good quality for the actual size trade-off. Because variable bitrate means, that bits that need more, have more, delicate sound, more intricate sound can have that, with the bitrate, or they can go down, etc. like that. But it turns out that there is a bug actually in like the underlining kind of sound, the way that the iOS and macOS do sound, that actually variable bitrates you do lose the seek, and the seeking of it actually goes wrong. So it turns out for all variable bit rates, and the reason why he doesn't use it is he has to use constant bit rates, even though it does impede on both size and also quality, is because of that. Now, I didn't realize that. So we are still releasing in VBR because, I'm sorry, bandwidth and all that. And also, I mean, it works. At least it works. But at least there's like it's one of those things where you look at it and you're like, oh, is this a bug? And you just forget about it every time and everything. And you realize, there actually is a problem. There's an underlining problem with iOS and macOS. So, yeah, they need to fix it. Get on it, Come on, Apple. But it was interesting, and he went through all of it and, explaining the nitty-gritty of how you do seeking and things in an MP3 with VBR and stuff. And, yeah, it's quite mind-blowing, really. Another podcast, actually, I've been listening to. Last year, I read a book from Tom Stewart. It was called Understanding Computation. And really interesting read, really well worth it. Great book. I didn't realise at the time, and he'd only actually done one podcast at that time, but he actually has a podcast called Why Are Computers? And It seemed that he started it, and he started it 2013, did one episode, and then kind of had a massive hiatus until this year. It is a great podcast. 4 episodes out now. First one, again, was from 2013. Talks about yak shaving. It's a great saying. I don't know, did you know?
You told me about this the other day, but I can't remember what it is. Go on.
It's essentially actually what I was doing on holiday, where it says any seamless, pointless activity which is actually necessary to solve a problem, which solves a problem, which several levels of recursion later solves the real problem you're working on. So it's the whole going down the rabbit hole of I want to, do an anagram solver. Well, no, before I need to do that, I need to learn tries and I need to understand how to make an efficient try and all this and going levels and levels deep before you eventually bubble back up to actually solving the problem you really need to do. And I was looking, and it was in the title, and I was like, what is yak shaving? It's just a great way of explaining pretty much everything I do. any time that I've gone down a rabbit hole, I'm I call it down the rabbit hole, but really, it is yak shaving from an old episode of something. Ren and Stimpy. I have no idea. I think that's an American
Ren and
TV
Stimpy.
show. Ren and Stimpy. Do you know Ren and Stimpy?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Huge. I think it was it an MTV type thing? I can't remember. But yeah,
I have no idea.
Ren and Stimpy.
But yeah, so it's from an episode of that, yak shaving, shaving the yak. Yeah, very, very odd, but very good. But he has a really interesting format. A couple of those episodes he's done is that he talks to someone about projects they've done and history of projects, because it's very interesting to work out how they had a problem and how they solved it and how it's kind of progressed and everything. And yeah, it tells really good stories, actually. There's 2. The first one discusses a Ruby project, and the fourth one actually discusses a really kind of an algorithm project, like a puzzle project, and how he solved it, which is really cool. And then he also in between that has one with Sandy Metz about a new book she's written, but it's 99 bottles, the problem of the 99 bottles of beer, and it's actually called 99 bottles of OOP, and it's out in beta at the moment. And it looks like a really interesting read, actually. I'm definitely gonna have to get it, put it on the bucket list of things I need to read, because it discusses kind of people people say, oh, that's not good code, or how to actually do it, and this is it. So everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. Likewise, everyone has an opinion about what good code looks like, but those opinions don't help you create it. And that's it. So she goes through the process of actually developing a good, solid OOP solution to this problem, and explaining each individual intricate step about the decisions made, etc. So it seems like a very interesting book, that hasn't really been touched on, that kind of thing. We have the solid principles and we have the do's and don'ts, but applying it to a real project or a real problem, and then going through kind of the map of the yes no, okay, we do this, and working out a decision tree of what actually we did. Trying to codify these problems, or trying to at least from that dissolve out of it, diffuse rules. And that's what they're trying to do, diffuse rules out of her thinking about how a problem should be solved. And Sandy Metz is a great, her talks are great. Her other book about Ruby is great, about OOP and Ruby. I mean, it is all written in Ruby, but it's just an OOP language. So take the Ruby syntax and just think of it in your own language.
Sort of made me think, when you're talking about what is good code, I find that really interesting, and I've been thinking about that recently myself, because the way I think working with React and Flux has challenged me a little bit, in the sense that the way I coded up my program was that I had maybe these countries that I needed to load at some point, and then maybe some organizations that I needed to load at some point, so they're all nice separated classes that just deal with specifically those things. And I've used it using RESTful controllers, all the kind of way that that Laravel sets out things to do. And then I've got like these events in my application where like, someone's changed the date. So I now need to go and get those organizations again. Need to go and get this because everything's been affected. Now, if I make like individual calls, then I'm doubling up the time essentially. Even more if I've got lots of other things I need to go and load. Or I can make a specific event type action that says, well, I need to go and get this, go and get that. Let's just combine it all into one and actually target my code around the event rather than I'm not explaining this very well, rather than the different types of attributes type thing.
No, you are. I mean, that is a so the event-driven model, and actually that is something that so event sourcing and things like that.
Yeah.
In the project we're actually working on, we actually are using that kind of mentality about events. Events are a beautiful thing because there's something that happened in the past. So you fire off an event, it's happened. You either deal with it or you ignore it. You can't change it because it happened, a typical thing in the event sourcing model is, maybe you have a user. I created that user. Okay. So at this time you created that timestamp, that event ID, you created that user. Create another event now on top of that, which now says change that user's name to Bob. Now, the great thing about this is you can replay those events. I can give you what it is now. I can say, okay, yeah, by the way, that guy's name is Bob. But I can also give it to you what his name was back in the day. I can say, okay, well, actually, it was this. Now, having this event model allows you to store the truth for every different transformation that occurs in a declarative format. And that is what Flux gives you, which is a great thing. And that's what we're kind of using, actually, in this model, is that we have this set of events, and events occur on a prepay account, so on an account. And what we do then is we use similar to how Redux does it, where you have the events come in and you do a reduction over something. So, you'll change your state based on our account. An account will create transactions that then affect an account based on those events. And what you're allowed to do is you're able to replay them. You're able to, do snapshots, save up to a certain state, like the event sourcing model, where you can cache things and things like that. So you don't get the performance bottlenecks of having to replay everything again. But it also allows you to be more declarative in the fact that I know exactly what happened and it always happened that way. Like, it isn't a change that just made, like if you have a stateful, unless you have logging, which is kind of logging you can kind of think of as kind of a poor man's event-driven model, because essentially it's saying what happened throughout time, but here's the source of truth, but this is what happened throughout time. As opposed to, in the case of, like, say, what we do in Flux and what we do in this model we're building is that we're saying, no, this occurred, do something with it, like whatever you want to do, like how you ever want to represent this is fine, but you can't change this did happen. We added that, we did that shortlist, we added that prepay, refunded that prepay and things like that, and it allows you to defer essentially when you do the action, like what you do with that action, as opposed to just adding it. And it allows you to have an append-only model.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really interesting, but I don't know, it changes the way that you do things.
It completely bamboozles you because it feels not right. Like, the typical CRUD model is you create, you update, and the update and delete are the bits that you're like, well, those are impactful. Like, now my truth is that, and you can get back to that. Like, you can think of an event source model or a list of events, an append only list of events as the same thing, because all you do is you apply all the events to your model, and then you get back the representation, the projection at the end, which is the same exact projection you would have of that real model you really have in the real world, which is that stateful model. But you can get so much more power out of it because you can actually do things different. You can say, oh, what happens if I remove these events and they never did that? I can replay that history and see it again and look at what happened. It completely changes your kind of the things you can do with the model and also how you deal with certain things. So one of the things we have actually at the moment is this idea of, so say like you have race conditions. Now, the way you deal with race conditions and stuff is by locking. And, you know, locking is a good solution, I mean, it's a definite, solution that you can use for it, where what you'd do is, you'd say that you want to lock, so say like a shortlist comes in. So for our, for my builders, so you have a shortlist. So someone gets shortlist for that job. Well, let's say then, okay, so he gets shortlists. We could either lock that user and say, does that user have a shortlist currently for that job? If he does, we can't add that into the model. Else, we add it into the model. Great. Okay, that's fine. That's a good way, but it's locking because it's saying I can't do anything. I'm assuming that this is always going to be this way. That there's the invariant is there's always going to be one shortlist for that person, and that our locking model is is dealing with the invariant and keeping us maintaining that this service is the only thing that allows to do it. And that's a fine way. Or you embrace the change and you embrace the fact that you could have this problem where maybe it gets double shortlisted, and what happens in the events is one after the other. Because it is append only, so there is a sequential order. A shortlist twice. Well, what you do is you think, okay, well, I can't delete. Like, that's happened. You embrace the fact that that's happened. But in the the reduction, you take that into account. So what would happen in this case, and what we do is we ignore anything apart from the first shortlist. Yeah. And it's a great way of thinking because now, in the case of these race conditions where, okay, what could have happened is that two people could have been shortlisted, there could be a case where you have double refunds or things like that. You're allowing that essentially in the event model, but you're handling it after the fact. And actually it's being more truthful to what's happening. And the reason why you're able to do that and you're able to kind of deal with it after the fact is because you know all the knowledge up front. If you're dealing with it in the stateful model, you don't get to go back. You don't get a chance to think about it. Like, you don't know what happened before, or you know what happened before, but you don't know what happened after. And in the case of race conditions, what means is they both think that they both should do the job. They both should be acting on it. And it just so happens after the fact, oh crud, one of them shouldn't have. But that's why you have to have locking in, and you have the idea, of like almost like a global lock over that user saying, no one can do anything with this user until I'm finished. But in the case of this, with events, I know what happened in the history. I can look through and replay and say, okay, well, actually, we've already done that, so you don't need to worry about it. And even though the history does, the events does say, oh, it's been credited twice, the actual projection we give you doesn't have that, and it takes into consideration that could have happened. And it's such a different way of thinking. I think that for me, it was mind blowing to think, okay, wow, I can actually do everything that I ever thought that you needed to have stateful stuff with, just with events and like simple reductions and things.
I remember that like locking was like a swear word when I did my concurrency module at university. I remember like in Java, just like if something's in this, just while loop until that's finished with, and then do something. And but there are certain circumstances where that's the kind of thing where I think what can you do really?
I mean, like the way that this model works is append only, and you require that your ID is bigger than the last event ID that is related to you. Yeah. So there is locking there in some cases, like Postgres inserting, has to be inserted in these things, like I can't have two of the same ID, so there has to be like kind of dealing with that, but that's Postgres' problem. But once you've got that append only version, you then are deferring the knowledge of what actually to do with that. So essentially, you're always looking back at history. You're always thinking of it. It's not something that is occurring now. Like, they haven't, the shortlist action, like you'd have, in the case of a stateful model, you do a shortlist service, and a shortlist service would actually go and change the state and say, yep, I'm shortlisted for this person. Now this person's shortlisted for that job. Well, in the way you think of it in events, is you think of it in the past. You think, well, they were shortlisted. So you're dealing with it after the fact, and there's a subtle change there with how you do actions and things, and you have to think of the fact that you're never actually getting the fully up-to-date, you're getting it up to date to a point in some regard, like the projection, but it is a projection at a certain pace in time because it's whatever they have, things could have happened after the fact. You're saying, okay, from there to there, whatever happened. But it's a great model, and I really think it's so valuable, especially for what we're doing with this kind of project where you want traceability. This gives you the ultimate traceability because it allows you to essentially go back and see exactly what happened, like what events occurred, and you can see bugs. And the nice thing is, like, say that you want to do a change. So you want to do a change to it, and you can actually replay all the events again to make sure you get the same state back. Yeah. So you can assert that these changes haven't broken things in the part, like this again, like subtle things that would never be you could never do in the stateful manner because you could never actually replay history. But this, you can replay history with the new updated reduction code and see that it gives you back the same results. Meaning, it's
so is
the
that
same
useful
thing.
For things like automated testing? You can put it back into that state to test it quite quickly, or?
Well, yeah. So what you do is you set up an environment where you're just, you've got a list of events and you apply those events, and then you just see what the outcome is. And then obviously you've got then those regression tests, because then if you do some tweaks to something, it will fail an old regression. You're like, oh crap, it didn't work, like that. Now, the only problem is change, because say the way that we actually shortlist someone changes. Now, I can't just change the service. I can't go, all right, well, just change that implementation now, because I need to take into consideration that before that date, it was this implementation, if that makes sense. Like, I can't say, all right, yeah, everything should just change now, because it's technically doing the wrong thing. Because if you look at the history, really, the history before this date, the implementation was like this. The history after that date, the implementation should be like this.
Yeah.
So the way you have to deal with it is you always have to be adding new events, essentially. You either do it based on time-based, which is a little hacky, or event-based, say anything before this event, deal with it this way, or thing like that. Or you just have a new event. Maybe there's there should always be a reason why you're changing this, like it's shortlisted with something, or, and it allows you to provide that. But really, the events you do, once you've done an action for them, you can't change that action, because that action... in history doesn't make sense. Now, what you can do, and this is the snapshot thing, is you can, and what a snapshot is essentially what is the reduction, the state of that reduction at that time, with these events applied. So that's what we do. So we have like we say, okay, do these, like every day, maybe it will generate a new snapshot with the, the events from like yesterday applied to it. Okay, fine. That's all applied. That's what it looks like now. Now, what you could do, if you wanted, is to get rid of all the old events and just baseline it at that. I mean, that's one way of solving it, but it's not the ideal solution. That is, kind of just hypothesizing that could happen. But what you can do then is, you then say from that, okay, apply the events, the new events and things like that. So, yeah, it's a great model. And I hope to kind of I'm hoping to do I say it all the time, but do a couple of blog posts on it to kind of get an idea, to explain kind of what we did in this project, because it's been really interesting. Going through and thinking of it in this way, and kind of embracing the mistakes that could happen in the events and dealing with them after the fact. Because dealing with them after the fact actually is such an easier way, because you have all the information. Like, I have the information. I know that 2 people got shortlisted twice. You got shortlisted twice for this job, as opposed to in the model of the shortlist service, where I'm like guarding and being quite protected of the fact that no, you're not allowed to. I'm locking. No one else is allowed to touch me until now. That is quite a performance hit, really, as well, because you're locking for no reason in some cases. In this case, it's like dealing with it after the fact. Now, we are providing, you don't want to just be like, okay, well, then allow anything. It does make no sense to be able to always add shortlists for things that multiple shortlists, that we shouldn't allow that in the model. So, we do add extra kind of invariance checkers that are kind of delivery side, which then allow them to, to only display, if you've been shortlisted for this job, you shouldn't be able to be shortlisted again. So you've already been shortlisted, don't display the button. But it is that it handles those race conditions that, look, if you ever did deal with the fact that you got shortlisted once, then, more than once, then we can handle it.
Yeah. So anyone who knows me will know that basically my mission in life is just to bring you down and find flaws in your code, right? I mean, that's basically what I live for. And as soon as I, complete that task, then I'll just say goodbye to this sweet world. But so here's a couple of questions for you. How long does your deployment take?
So it takes. So you do one build. So you have a build in Jenkins for master, and then master passes. That takes about 10 minutes. Once master passes, it then does a staging build. That's another 10 minutes. And then deploy that actually pushes it to the servers. And then that takes about 10 minutes as well. Or so. I mean, probably 8 minutes each interval, because it's doing the tests and then generating, like each time it's doing things that are different. Like for the test for the first one, once it's in staging, it's building the assets for staging, and then it's building the assets for deploy. And then once it's up in deploy, we SSH into the box, and we actually then do a switch there, and we just have a little command that does the deploy for that, for that version. So we can then be quite fine-grained of when we do it. So it's about 30 minutes, I reckon, to get a new release out.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah,
it's okay. I mean, it could be better. Like you could get seeding, have continuous delivery. That once it's in master, it should just go out. But we having that kind of global switch has been so useful sometimes, and it does happen. We want to release something on a certain time of day. Like I need, I want to do a change in the morning. Like maybe it does require me to, the way our infrastructure works, being a monolith and stuff, maybe this is why, if you move to a microservice arc, you can be a little more lenient and a little different. But, say you need to do an update to a service and then do, an update to an application service and then actually do a change within the code. Well, I want to do that in the morning. So I'll do a deploy in the evening, make sure it's all passing everything, wake up at 1 o'clock or whatever time we have to wake up, do a deploy, do the change, do a deploy, and you're done. Like the switch, we've delayed that deployment of that version, but we've done everything up to the point of actually doing the actual symlink switch. So I value that. I mean, I don't know what your opinions are. Like, do you feel it should be do you feel like CD is the complete way, to do it, where you just deliver the minute it's in master, it should be at people's desktops, or do you like the whole idea of being able to batch up changes within reason?
Will you accept a Boolean one-word answer?
Go on.
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad, because I thought you were going to say no, and I thought, I'm going to have to cry.
No. I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you, but I just I was reading a little bit about it, but I'll give my full opinion next episode. But
this is where you completely slate me afterwards,
No. I mean, I was just reading in the something. He was talking about some companies where, like, deploys were like 2 days. So
that is quite scary. I mean, it's scary when it's within, like, I mean, you can hear people saying like within the weeks or something like that as well, because it has to go through so many tiers. We're quite lucky because we don't have we don't have a user testing, like, it's,
I was just about to say, do you have user
like
acceptance testing?
Now, but we do have people who, us as developers, it is that whole idea that, you as a developer are responsible for that code.
Take accountability.
You take accountability, that's it. So, it should be good enough to go out if you deem it, and if it's not good enough, then it's the test suite should have picked it up. Let's improve the test suite.
Again, in the book, it sort of says, he's worked with companies where they've had like full, user acceptance testing teams, but they're so detached from the code. How do they really know exactly what it's meant to do?
Exactly, and I think that's where your deployment strategy kind of goes into your testing strategy as well, because the two are very entwined. Where if you've got a good set of tests that are quick, that are responsive to the change, that are well built, that are well designed, that that you don't worry about, that don't fail randomly, that gives you then that full sense of, it's all right, it's not that, it's just that problem again, it's like if there's a bug in it will be picked up quickly. You can then have a far more confident deployment and quicker deployment, because you can be like, no, pass in, right, ship it. And I think that's my whole thing, where if there is a bug in, if we find a bug, then you write a failing test that's that replicates that bug, and you fix it. And that's the way it should be, if you then do that, you can be confident that bug's never going to come back again. There's always going to be bugs in code. You can't stop that. I think, well, in my code, there definitely will always be some bugs in my code. I'm sorry, there will be, but you limit it where you say, okay, well, if it does occur, my feeling, so my kind of like, dealing with the problem and being like, okay, I'm sorry, I suck, I made a bug, is to say, well, at least I put a test in though that won't do this bug again. And that's kind of my, trying to rectify the problem after the fact.
I'd still fire you.
I think you're right too. Exactly. Code. Bugs in code is just, again. I think we end up on these shows like with these really good sound bites, and I think you have any bugs in your code,
you're fired.
You're fired. Yeah, I think that's great. And Alan Sugar kind of, you're fired.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've passed this test anyway. So
thanks. Oh, that's always nice.
And you told me you had no flaky tests when I messaged you. You said your test suite is perfect, right?
Well, so we do have that. Well. So we do have a shared database, which can be a little bit of a pain, because with a shared database, essentially any state, we share the database not only for tests, but it's for our dev database. So typically, what you have, what you'll do is, you're asserting for certain things, like you assume the world. I mean, the great thing within memory and being able to test like packages and things like that is that you have the whole world. You can say, all right, the only events that are in here are these. So the first one should be this one, and the last one should be that one. But in the case where you may actually have extra data, you'll get into a problem where obviously the first one may not be what you expect it to be, though you want it to be, because in your ideal world, when you're doing the arrangement, it is that. So there's a couple of ways of tackling that. The first one is to, in a transaction, wipe out all the data, clear it out, and say, make a brand new world where everything's clean. Now that can be quite quite performance heavy, because you may be deleting a lot of stuff within this transaction just to do something to then revert it back. The other way is to be more intelligent with what you actually remove. So like maybe in the transaction again, like, oh, it's based on expires at and stuff, so you can be like, okay, well, set everyone that's currently expires at to this and stuff. Now I was a bit against that, like it's quite an in-depth thing, but actually when you're doing the tests and when you think about it, like it's typically on deliveries or typically like in bridge stuff, on stuff where you're doing nitty-gritty PDO stuff and like doing database stuff, so you can get away with it. I think like dealing with a command, it should know that I'm running a command, I just want to assert that it is doing the full thing that I expected it to do. I've got coverage from the base domain concepts up, but I need to make sure that the actual it's a functional test based on a dev database that could be like the real thing. So you can do that, so you can do more fine-grained transaction kind of deleting and stuff. And then the other way is to actually have then, I guess, a real database that's only being used for that one person and that one thing. And maybe that is a better way, but yeah, so that is our only kind of, I would say, flaw, is that we have a shared database that sometimes bites us, because sometimes the build will fail and it'll be for no reason other than the fact that a test hasn't taken into consideration that the world isn't as pure as it thinks it is, I guess.
Seems like a good place to end. I like that line. That's good.
The world isn't as pure as it thinks it is. I like that.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much done an hour anyway, so it's a pretty good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, it's been a great episode, man. It's good speaking to you again. Feels like ages.
Yeah, and you.
But,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, audience, it's been another great episode, and we should hopefully speak to you again next week, or maybe the week after, because we've been quite relaxed the last couple of weeks. But yeah, we shall hopefully be back onto a bit more of a regular schedule. But in the meantime, there's been loads of decent podcasts being released and stuff on other ones, so you've got plenty of stuff to listen to. Anyway, so audience, speak to you soon, and Mickey, I'll speak to you soon as well.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Easter.
Just in case we have to release this in December.
I like it. I like that. So, yeah, with my editing skills, it does take a while. So yes, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Shall I just say like happy every I don't know, festival there is, and then you've got less pressure on when you release it?
I think it's great, because it means I can just cut
Happy
it out.
Easter,
to that.
everyone.
There you go. Thank you. Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, then, audience. Speak to you next week. Bye.
Cheers.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.